You shut off your phones. We'll call the meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The roll call, please.
Martyr, absent. Mazer?
Here.
Schneider?
Here.
Sofa?
Here.
Wilson?
Here.
Weaver?
Here.
Zimmer?
Here.
I make a motion that Susan absent approved.
Support.
Mazer?
Yes.
Schneider?
Yes.
Sofa?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Weaver?
Yes.
Zimmer?
Yes.
And Martyr, absent.
Non-agenda items from the sidelines. I don't have anything here, so move on to comments from city administration. Donna, you have anything? We'll move on to adoption or amendment of the agenda. I think Larry had one.
Yes, I want to amend the agenda under unfinished business. One, we didn't mark it, we have marijuana ordinance, and two, we have the totes zoning, and three, I would like the blood on Main Street. No further motions for amendment. I make a motion we adopt the agenda as amended.
Support.
Schneider?
Yes.
Sofa?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Weaver?
Yes.
Zimmer?
Yes.
Martyr, absent. Mazer?
Yes.
Okay. Going to our unfinished business and the revisions to the marijuana ordinance. I guess, Alan, are we letting you take it from here? Or?
Yeah, well, let me start. We've met, I don't say we because that's not accurate. I've met with council members at any given point in time with respect to revisions that have been sort of discussed. But there was litigation that was going on previously, which is now resolved. So I guess I don't know where this council sits as far as revisions that it would like to see. Although we have an agenda, I think, that has some of them marked. So we can go ahead and talk about those. We can talk about some other revisions. I will say that when the ordinance was originally drafted, going on 2.5 years, 2 years ago now, there was very little guidance from any Michigan courts on what you were allowed to do as a city. We knew you could have marijuana establishments and marijuana facilities. We knew what the state initiated legislation. So again, it was the state legislation was written by not the legislators, right? It was a vote of the people basically. So we knew what that said, but we didn't know how courts were going to interpret it. So we had decisions that came out December 15th or December 16th of 2022, right at the end of last year, from the Court of Appeals. And there should be another one coming out very soon that have given us some guidance. And one of the issues was in evaluating. The law says that when you're going to award a marijuana license in the city, if you have if you have a limited number of licenses and you're having to pick between multiple applicants, the law says that you have to pick the applicant that's best suited to operate a marijuana establishment in the city. That's all it says. Doesn't tell you what factors to consider. It leaves it vague. So a lot of the litigation was involved with what are the factors that a municipality can consider. And there was this group of people that thought, well, the factors have to be directly related to their ability to operate a marijuana establishment. So those might be, are you previously licensed? Do you have a criminal history? Those kind of things. But a lot of cities and municipalities were adopting more stringent scoring systems where those might be, you might get 5 points for having a license in the past, you might get 5 points for not having a criminal record, 5 points for having the capital to invest. But then they were giving points for, are you rehabbing a vacant building? Are you in an area that we want to see you in? Are you a green type operation? And there was an argument that, well, those have nothing to do with their ability to operate a marijuana establishment in the city. So those shouldn't be things that municipalities are allowed to consider. And so what the court said in December was, when the state says, you guys make the determination as a city council, it means you make the determination as a city council. You make the determination what's relevant that you want to consider. Doesn't necessarily have to be directly related to that. So basically it upheld the city of Berkeley's factoring system or scoring system, which had some of those kind of characteristics. So the idea is that the courts are saying now, we dump this on your lap, you guys are allowed to handle how we dumped it on your lap. I won't say that means we can consider anything, you know, correct, and there's some good law to suggest we can't prefer locals. That was another sort of thing that I think we're gonna see out of a city of Detroit case that's coming up, whether you can give local preference to individuals with a local license. That may be something that's a little out of bounds. But other than that, in you know, legal considerations, the state said, hey, we gave this to you, you guys figure it out. We didn't have that before, which is what prompted almost, and I don't want to say every, because I don't like speaking in absolutes, but almost every place where you had applicants who weren't given a license, there's been a lawsuit, as we know here. So, but now, hopefully those start to fade away, and you know, I'm sure someone will take that Court of Appeals decision to the Supreme Court, but right now it stands as good law. So we have a little more direction from the zero direction that we had when this ordinance was drafted, which I think is helpful, because I know one of the things that was talked about, frankly, was whether we were gonna have a factoring sort of scoring rubric system. And we didn't, because it was very questionable, and Berkeley was getting sued, and I think it was Grand Rapids was another one, it might have been Traverse City, I sometimes get those confused, but that was an issue. So our ordinance didn't have that, and you know, that's not the reason that litigation happened. So anyway, that's a long way around to get to, we have a better idea within the last 30 days than we have at any point in time about what we're allowed to do under the marijuana.
And that's for choosing, and that really only pertains to if we're choosing to two people applying for one license.
Yeah, I mean, if you had a sort of an unlimited license situation, none of the competitive factor analysis really comes into play.
Or one license, one applicant.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
Can I make a few comments? Okay. Back prior to the lawsuit that got settled, we already had made certain recommendations how we should change the ordinance, marijuana ordinance. One was we changed the selection committee strictly to council, and one was to eliminate the 21 days, and the other a suggestion, or what we were pursuing, is that we eliminate everything except one retail outlet.
And provisioning center.
Pardon?
And leave the provisioning center and the adult use.
Yeah, I was going to get to that, Jason, you're correct. So that was in the process, and then we stopped it because of the impending lawsuit. Subsequent to that we did had a discussion with the mayor, where I requested Alan to proceed with those necessary changes. The other change that we were going to make, and this is in the zoning ordinance, was to remove the performance-based commercial and eliminate that from that ordinance. And performance-based commercial is our current commercial overlay C1 district. So we would make all those changes and any necessary changes into the ordinance that was on zoning from performance-based. Now, when I stated we eliminate all except retail, I understand there's another ordinance for what would you say?
A provisioning center is for medical marijuana patients.
Yeah, and I don't know if those both have to be if they both have to be in there because one is medical, understand, or what, so.
Well, they're both under
so
one
I-
roof.
So my question to you is, do we have to keep that one in there because it relates to retail? I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, so right now, there's one facility open, correct?
One facility, they have a
Two licenses.
retail
Yeah.
license and provisional
Yeah, so
license.
the way the state licenses these are the medical or the provisioning center licenses separate from the retailers. So they hold two separate licenses. So we have to allow, well, the way the ordinance is written is to allow one of each.
Okay, all right, so, okay, that clarifies that.
Here, wait, I don't want to move away from that. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Yeah,
Can we require that they have both licenses?
Yeah, you can. I think that's a fair.
I think we would definitely want to have
Because if they're
that.
gonna open a store, I don't want it to be just medical or just adult use.
We wanna get both.
It'd be better that all under one roof and they're paying for both licenses.
okay,
All right.
the other thing then, what I'd like to,
That's co-locating is what it's called. We
Right,
can require that.
now, the other thing that I'd like clarification on, the performance-based commercial is actually in the zoning ordinance. Now, if we change that one there, is it necessary now, will the planning commission
Yes.
have a public hearing? Just on that one?
Let me ask a question before, and this may be something that Mr. Sofa's gonna comment on. When we went back, in September of this year or so, and that was back before planning, was it passed at that point in time with that change? Because I know that you had specifically made
Yes,
a revision.
we made the revision to put it in central business district
Okay.
and not performance.
And that's where it sits right now.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I
So
think he
we,
wants
so
to make
then
sure.
we can take that out without going back to the planning commission and public hearing.
It's gotta go into the paper, but we had that meeting.
I think it already has.
We've already done that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it made an end to the ordinance, so we just gotta be sure on that.
Well, I mean, if you did it as part of the ordinance, I mean, we just have to make sure it's documented, but I know that it was, published properly, I believe that it was put in the paper, afterwards, and that was the idea.
And it was.
So once we
prior to-
confirm that was all buttoned up, then we're done.
Okay.
If there are other zoning changes, they have to go back to planning.
Okay, now, so what we should do then is, if council goes along with this, is proceed just as those things I outlined, and see if I got everything on there, yeah. And whatever, the 21 days, we want to eliminate that too.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, in what I would propose is rewriting that entire, because we're getting rid of the selection committee.
Right.
So I would take a redraft of that section, which would eliminate the 21 days.
Okay,
And just so I understand, it would be your idea, Mr. Wilson, would be to only have the retail, the storefront locations, retailer and provisioning.
absolutely. Now, the other thing I'll mention, we currently have two because of the lawsuit.
Right?
Now, can we stipulate somehow, if that goes out of business, we can go back to one
Yeah.
in the
If
ordinance?
that's council's wishes. we
Well, I'm
can
not
do
sure
that,
if
yeah.
it is, but
That's what the
that's
MMO
what I'm
lawyer had
recommending.
told us.
Yep,
They
absolutely.
told us since our ordinance says only one is allowed, if one of those businesses were to fail, it goes back to one and no other
What I
license
would
be
do,
available.
since we're taking up sort of a redraft, I would make that 100% clear by putting it in the ordinance.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, I think, and then, I think you've answered all my questions there, and if it's up to council, and if they agree with all those things I stated,
There's one
then
more.
I would, because it's up, open to discussion before I make a motion on
May I just ask clarification real quickly now? We're saying one license that is inclusive of a medical and a recreational license. Is that?
Those are two separate licenses.
Yeah.
Well, when we say that we're allowing one license in the ordinance, that should be assumed that both of those licenses are in that building.
Yeah.
that.
Is it clear in the ordinance if that's what that means?
Not right now.
Okay,
That's what we're talking
No,
about.
no, no, yeah, it will be,
I want
yes.
a clarification
Yep,
on that. So
absolutely.
that one license in one or co-location means.
Yeah, so you
that
have
it's a
medical and recreational in one
marijuana that
building.
comprises one license
Yep.
for that location.
Yeah.
No, what the idea is, one physical location, two licenses.
Yep.
Yes.
And then the discussion just a moment ago, we would like to perhaps, discretion of council, say that that second license encompassing the same meaning can be eliminated at some point.
It can
in
be
time.
eliminated if one of those businesses fail. It reverts back to what our ordinance says, which is one license, one recreational,
Location.
one
One
location.
Yeah,
location.
we're using,
And
Right
they
now we
have
have
to-
two, but it's
And
basically
we
by
require
code.
both licenses, so we get the $5,000 times 2 for the city.
yeah, there's a difference between licenses and locations, but I understand the idea.
Right, we call it, what do you call it, co-location?
Co-locating, yeah.
And we're taking out stacked licenses because
Yeah.
that's usually for growers, right?
Yeah, if you're not having growers, we're
Then
not
we don't
having
need a
staff.
stack
Yep.
license. One other thing that we need to look at is the transfer of a license. We'd like to eliminate the ability for a business to simply transfer a license out and say, oh, hey, found somebody else that's gonna take over my business, they're just gonna do it. You know, we want them to have the full process to get approved.
I don't know, can we legally?
We can eliminate
we can't
transfer,
legally-
right?
We can't.
We can require,
Where are we at?
we're gonna get into, you're starting to get into area that people would have difficulty and may challenge. I will tell you, you could put it in the ordinance and we can make every effort to enforce it.
So you got 11706.
Thanks, Jason.
B. A license for an existing establishment may be transferred to a new licensee that intends to continue operating at the same location, subject to city council approval and Laura for $200. They would just be able to take over, give us $200. To be approved, the transfer, they must meet all requirements in the ordinance. We just trying to make it hard that, because right now we have the second license that generally really was put in due to civil action. And for them to say, get that building up and off the ground and then just offer it up for sale to the next person. You know, and then now all of a sudden we're still stuck with two.
So I'm gonna, as an attorney, I will tell you that there can be semantics games played with the word transfer too.
Okay.
So I understand the intent. For example, license is owned by ABC LLC. That's who owns the license. We don't know, we know who owns ABC LLC.
But ABC LLC only has the license because of the civil action.
No, I'm
What'd
not
you say?
talking, no, ABC is, I know
I know.
no, I'm just
You
using
know
this
what
as
I'm
an
talking
example. ABC has, because this is gonna apply to everybody, right? So ABC company has a license. We have a no transfer provision. I'm gonna write it in a way that will prevent this, but I'm gonna explain something. So ABC might say, all right, we can't transfer it, but what we're gonna do is transfer ABC company to somebody else. So ABC still shows as the license holder, but different people now own ABC.
All right.
So I will write it in an effort to try and block as many of those things as you can. You know, there could theoretically be a situation where really it's different, because that's what you're talking about.
Right.
You don't have a relationship with ABC company, you got a relationship with the guy that owns ABC company,
Right, right.
And you don't want that person to change. But they're not, we're gonna make a requirement that they report that to you, and that a change of, and I guess this is, what are we
I
gonna
mean,
say,
it's
over
still-
10%, over 25% of ownership, or?
Yeah, and it still says in here that transfer must meet all requirements to be a licensee and all that, but I just, it just seems like, you know, you get someone to come in here and open up and then sell right away to somebody else.
Well,
That we have no idea who they are.
The response is gonna be, I invested all this money to make everything right here, and now I'm not gonna be able to
So they're
cash
just
out on
basically
my
flipping
investment.
it. Yeah.
I mean-
They're flipping a license though.
Well, not necessarily, because it'd be 10 years down the road, you know.
I originally thought our second license that was given out was a them only. and
It is, I'm not talking
Yeah.
about,
Okay, no,
yeah.
but that is
Yeah.
a question I do have, I was gonna ask. So if they decided they didn't want to be in business anymore, can they sell that license?
They're operating currently under all of the obligations and all the requirements of your ordinance, so, except for the fact that you only allow one license. So they were given a license, but they are subject to the terms of your ordinance. I think that
We
they can
didn't
make.
have, we didn't have a stipulation in there that they can't sell.
That it was them only.
No,
BRT
I don't believe
wasn't
that was part of, I did not handle the lawsuit, but I've seen the documents. I'd have to check that, actually. I will get back. That may be part of it. I can't recall.
It's just kind of something that raises
Yeah.
some concern is, we've gone through all this for BRT basically, because of the
But
lawsuit.
you're also saying and there's been no vote, so pardon that, but you're also suggesting the other license that you can't transfer either.
Right,
Okay. The one that went through the process
Sure.
already. Okay.
really, you can, it's across the board, it's
Yeah.
fair, it's whichever one sticks around. The other things here, I just have some questions about, on general regulations, and you go to E, and there, you got 1 through 5.
Where is that?
Yeah, what section?
Jason?
It's, 11707,
Oh, 117.
yep. And I just go down to E 1 through 5, and all of those things listed there, it just, my question is, we don't require that of any other business in town. We don't require that of any bar or liquor store or any other business in town. How do you say you have to do all these reportings, but these other licensed businesses through Laura don't have to do all these things? We don't.
They don't have, those other businesses don't have any licenses issued by the city, I don't
Is
believe.
that's the
Yeah.
case then?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're 100% LARA issued or liquor control issued license. At some point in time, the city may have been asked, this is an interesting point because it ties back into your last one. So this is, at some point in time, when a liquor license was issued in the city of Memphis, assuming the procedure is the same as it's been the last 15, 20 years, let's talk about a regular quota license, so a bar or restaurant that's running a Class C. Liquor control will require that applicant, if there's a license available, to come to the city of Memphis and say, the liquor control requires the city council to make a recommendation for or a recommendation against the license. My guess, you've got the Class C here, the bar restaurant, at some point in time, the city approved it. City doesn't issue the license, unlike the marijuana license where we are allowed to. However, interestingly, they can take that license out of the city, it's theirs. They can transfer as they fit, and then I guess they can remove it from the city. Someone else can bring one into the city without you having any authority over it.
You talking about marijuana?
No, I'm talking about alcohol. If we're gonna compare the two, somebody else can bring a liquor license and open a storefront here without you saying boo as a city council on whether you want it, as long as it's compliant with zoning and all that. So that it's an interesting dichotomy because we're now telling someone they can't sell a marijuana license, but you can sell a liquor license. So it's just something to think about.
Okay. That was just a thing, because it's, it just seems like it would be a lot of work for city council and for the businesses to create all these reports, have all these meetings and stuff like that.
The idea was prove to us you still deserve to be in the city.
And also on that point, we have a part of this ordinance that we're gonna receive a report from these businesses once a year in March annually. And I think that's important at this point because everything is in such a flux that we should get as much information as possible to know if revenue's being generated, if everything's being followed. At least it seems prudent for the foreseeable future anyway. I mean, you could always strip it down later, but right now I want as much information as possible. It will help inform my decisions about this industry going forward, what we have here in town.
It tells you too whether these entities kept their promises that are made when they come to you begging for the license.
It's an accountability.
Yes, it is. And I know that we have a renewal or non-renewal provision. I will tell you, and I would say, I know we're in a public meeting, I have no problem saying in a public meeting, you can't be arbitrary and capricious and you can't just make up not renewing a license, right? So having these documents, and you can, so if you decide you don't want to renew, you can say, hey, look, guys, number one, or you're not complying with the ordinance. Number two, you told us you were going to have 15 jobs and you only got 2 people working over that. I mean, you need to have some sort of factual basis if you were gonna decide
You need
not to
some data
renew.
points to
You
go
need
on.
something to tell, you need something. So I don't have an issue with it because they're coming to you asking for renewal and you have to have some basis to say yes or no.
So for an annual report.
Correct.
Good. One other thing I was going through here, just maybe a little revision on 117.310. Now, it's obvious we don't allow the consumption of cannabis on the properties. But I just think it's kind of, you got something in there.
Where are you, I'm sorry, where
Yeah,
are
I
you,
missed
Jason?
that too, Jason.
117.3
03?
E10.
E10, okay.
E10?
Yeah,
No,
and,
that's
and,
not- I don't have any.
and it'll probably
I don't
go,
have it either.
I don't think it's.
No, that's been,
What page? Why don't you tell them the page?
oh, 17.
Oh,
Oh,
I don't have a 17.
no,
Is that
Oh, wait,
zoning?
maybe I do, no, I'm sorry.
Is that zoning?
No, it,
it's in, is it,
no, it's, comply with the following. So it sets their hours and things like that. So.
That's
what-
zoning.
Yeah, oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
It's
Okay,
just,
I'm
the,
with
just
you.
the one thing I see in here, and whatever, it'll probably go unenforced, you know, I doubt our police are gonna go and get somebody, but, retailers shall not allow the sale, consumption, or use of alcohol or tobacco products on the premises. You've got a customer who shows up and he's smoking a cigarette in his car. That would be a violation of the law, but it seems like, obviously understand the alcohol, you're not supposed to consume that anywhere, but tobacco's a little different, I would say.
well, how can you not allow the sale if that's what you're
Well, you're,
covering?
no, they can't sell tobacco, but it literally says no consumption. So like, you know, you couldn't,
You couldn't have an employee standing outside having a cigarette.
Correct.
or a customer chewing tobacco. Is there any way to kind of revise that, just to, it seems petty, but then it'll probably go you know, it's not like the police are gonna show up and do anything like that.
I
but-
mean, if that's council's wishes, we could write it to, perhaps
Obviously-
say inside of the building or something.
Yeah, there's no
along those lines.
smoking, yeah, but, sale, consumption, or use of alcohol is not allowed, and sale of tobacco products is not allowed, which is state law anyway, they can't do those two things.
Yeah, I mean, we could do something along.
I mean, it's a violation since we're cleaning things up, it's something to kind of look at. And I think
That's gotta
all.
go through planning,
That would, just to remove use of tobacco on
Yeah, zoning.
premises.
zoning, yep.
I mean, do we leave it, because you know people are just gonna do it anyway, people are smoking cigarettes or whatever they go.
Oh, we can send it over to planning that
Create
said-
extraneous stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanna put it through, take it to planning, go ahead and.
I mean, they're having meetings every month, so.
no,
I don't. I think we got bigger fish to fry than that.
Oh, no, I mean, we're cleaning up, because the rules are rules, and I mean, are we gonna enforce that somebody can't have a cigarette in that parking lot?
I don't know.
Or chew
You do it in
tobacco?
Oh, geez,
schools.
you think you're gonna?
You do it schools,
They don't enforce it, schools,
yeah, but it's a law.
it's on the law,
Yeah,
right?
well, we got all kinds of laws that are framed in mischief. I mean, are we gonna really concentrate on that?
I'm just saying,
I
I'm
don't think
just,
so.
well, we're cleaning things up.
Yeah, oh, I hear you. I'm just giving you my opinion, Jason.
Is that meant more for loitering then, if it becomes a problem?
Loitering's a
That it can be
separate law.
that it can be enforced?
Loitering would mean, you actually have no purpose,
That would be a question for.
Yeah,
or the lawyer.
I think the suggestion is, do we have it there in case we need it, and it's what we have to hang our hat on?
I mean, I guess you got people
That's
just hanging off
the
no
question.
cigarette.
Right, yeah, that's probably a correct statement.
Yeah.
any further discussion then?
No more further discussion?
Yeah,
Or he,
I have one more point.
Anyone
So,
else?
I know that Yark was involved with Laura at the state level, with his representative, and now he stated to me that he thought the whole medical license was going to go away.
I
So I
think,
have a question,
Yeah.
so if that does happen, can we revise the cost of what we charge for the license?
if they revise, the cost of what you charge for the license is dictated by statute, they'd also have to revise that portion of it.
So they can't,
5,000, you're saying?
they can't just get rid of the medical part then, right?
Well, sure they could, the state.
Yeah.
Don't get me started.
There was-
So one of the things I think that everybody, because we have some new people here, I agree that I think eventually we will see a uniform license, that isn't a difference between a retailer and a medical license. The revenue sharing that comes from the state, and I don't have the figures for this year, it was maybe $40,000 per license last year.
56.
56, yeah, okay. So that is only paid on the retailer license. It's not paid on any provisioning center license. And the reason is that really the only difference when you walk into one of these facilities, and then they're separate, the license, the cashiers are separate between medical and recreational, is that if you have a medical card, you don't pay the excise tax, and the excise tax is what funds the payments to the municipalities. So I think eventually they're gonna figure out a way just to have a single licensees, and maybe they'll do something with, you know, you show your medical card and you don't pay the tax or something. I don't know what they're gonna do, but no, they may say that, hey, it's one license and it's still a $5,000 fee. I don't know what they're gonna do. Maybe they'll up the fee. Something that you should probably make sure your representatives understand you're concerned about.
At least like a cost of living increase or something.
Yeah. I don't get that vote.
So, okay, you're gonna make a motion?
Yeah,
Excuse me,
can I?
we're still talking about revisions, possible revisions on this before we vote.
Yep.
I wanted to suggest to the council, and in lieu of these few points briefly I'll make, that I would like to change in 117.01D, that last item.
Okay,
Should be number 3, number 117.01D.
What was it, D?
Yeah, D letter would be the last letter under that section.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason I was proposing this for these few points briefly is keeping in mind that we've got a likely possibility offering you a license of any kind, as Larry said, you know, that there is practical lawsuits involved with all of them. We're scheduled to receive these reports, and as I stated earlier, I'd like to use that data to ascertain whether I think, you know, things are going well for future decisions or expansions. And due to the unsettled attributes of this whole industry, which we've been discussing, and many of the passionate feelings we've seen expressed, that this will be a move to up our transparency level, which some, you know, laid that claim against the council. So what I'm asking is that request for that language there, and I don't know if I have it properly verbiage here, but I've got it written out so that maybe, you know, I said to ask our questions for our attorney.
Is that in my packet?
Pardon me? Yeah, I put it in that information only. That under that section, that we would strike the language or increasing or reducing any types of marijuana establishments authorized operating in the city. So I'm proposing that we would strike that language and then add a new section, add it to D1, 117.01 D1. And that request for additional or new, previously unauthorized marijuana establishments. The expansions or additions of an existing dispensary shall be referred to the Planning Commission in the context of a public hearing to allow citizen input and participation, which I think will give the community a chance to weigh in, other businesses a chance to weigh in, and we may not even get there for a while, but for this council and future councils, I think that's giving a little bit too much authority, and I would like to see more of a check and balance before the industry expands, particularly since things are in a settling mode here now, and as we gather more information, rather than arbitrarily on a whim that you can just increase or decrease businesses.
what we're doing tonight. We're decreasing.
But this is looking in an overall context
Okay.
for the future, because right now, the way the ordinance is written, in many places, it's at the resolution of the council, which I've seen carried out last summer.
Yeah. It's what we're doing right
We
now.
added a business last summer.
That's what we're doing right now.
Well, let
We're
me finish.
decreasing
Last
the
summer, the
number.
council, I'm just
right
making
now.
a statement how it works
By
now.
fiat.
How it works now, exactly.
Mhm.
You made a
Don't
second
last-
license of it. Can I please finish, Jason? Give me a moment. last summer, the council, July 3rd, you made a second license available. A week later, the license was rescinded. So that's the way it works right now. I've seen it work. What I'm proposing is that for future expansions of businesses, either increasing or reducing, but particularly just expansion, that put the issue to the planning council, let everybody have their say, make the recommendations to the council like we do. Council still has the final word, so it adds a layer of transparency, and I think it would satisfy a lot of the animosity that was experienced over the last 2 years, which we had those 2 major meetings in the planning commission where people were upset about that. It wasn't so much the nature of the business, it was the way that it came about. So that would eliminate that. So I'm just expressing it, I think it would be a healthier way to go about that, rather than leaving that power solely in the hands of the council, which you will ultimately have the power to reject or accept.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the one thing I learned from all that was, you know, throughout those meetings, and it says, again, right in our handbook, your municipal handbook, that says, you know, don't generally be swayed by angry people or petitions or things like that.
Depends on what you
Hold
think
on.
is angry petition. That is
Hold
citizen
on.
input.
I'm talking now. Okay. It is citizen input, but it seems that the body that's making the recommendation is not really regarding what we were advised in our citizen handbook, in our handbook, that says, don't let that sway you, look at the merits of the fact and things like that. But what we had was exactly what's explained in the handbook, where you're not going to find a whole lot of people who are going to show up in favor of any business. You're generally going to find people who are going to show up against things. It's just human nature, and it's how people do things. They're going to show up and be against it, and so then people take the assumption like that's the popular opinion. Well, it's generally not really the popular opinion. It's just the loud. It could be the loud.
Enough to show up, Jason.
That's fine, but when it came to a
That's
vote,
what he was
but when it
showing
came to a
us.
vote of the people, what happened? Who was the majority?
That was on the issue, that was a different issue.
That was on the issue of scrapping the ordinance and not having
Correct.
marijuana at all.
We're
It
talking
seemed
a
like
different issue here. We're talking about how do you expand the businesses.
But it
and
seems
what's
like the
process.
voters were in favor of the marijuana businesses.
But that doesn't speak
But,
to,
but,
that doesn't
but
speak to
the,
expansion.
but the planning
It's a different
commission
issue.
assumed that they weren't because they heard the loud voices.
No, that's getting into the weeds there. That was
I
not,
was
that was
there.
the process.
I was there and I heard everybody, a lot of
Well, we have a
people.
difference of opinion.
Well, I heard a lot of people after the
I
meeting
agree
say-
We have a difference
Hold
of
on.
opinion, Jason.
Just hold on. I heard a lot of people say, isn't it apparent that the people are against this? Well, obviously it's not apparent because you just assumed it based on the people that were there. But when it went to a vote and people don't have to make their opinions public and worry about their reputation or what other people think, what do? They voted in favor of it because they had the privacy to do that. But no, you're not going to get a lot of people to go and cheerlead for marijuana at a city council meeting when all their kids' teachers are there or other people like that they're worried about what they think of them. They're not going to show up at those meetings and give you their positive citizen input. Only the people who are against it, and it's just a prime example of all the people who are against something will show up and be loud, sway the opinion of the board makes a recommendation, and city council is swayed by the recommendation itself because it was recommended by a board. But the reality of it is that you're not getting, but you're never going to get both sides to show up at the meeting. You're never going to, because you're not going to get the people who are afraid to speak out and say, yeah, I'd love to see a marijuana store here in town, because they're worried about what people think. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do it. But they're definitely, if they're against it, there's no problem in doing that. There's no social backlash of you going, I don't want a pot store. You know, there's nobody going to sneer at you, or your kids aren't going to go to school and think, and their principals and teachers aren't going to say, oh, you know, they don't want a family or whatever, because they're for it. You know, and even the numbers of the petition, things like that. It didn't pan out when people had, because you're face to face with someone. Will you sign this? Yeah, okay, they'll sign it. But those same people, many of whom I've talked to, signed the petition, yet when they went to the ballot box, they voted in favor of the marijuana. You know, so I don't think you're getting a fair representation at those citizen input meetings, unless you find a way of doing it where people can be anonymous. Because that's just, it's what it is. Read the handbook. It advises you on that. It
That's all it
advises
is.
you exactly
I'm
on
talking
that.
about just a pure Democratic, Republican representation, the way that we operate our government, okay? And I'm not disputing,
On every issue?
look,
So every time we're gonna change an ordinance, we're gonna have a public hearing with the planning
no,
commission?
I'm speaking specifically to this narrow issue right here. I mean, if again, I'm just proposing.
So now, just so you realize, that means you'd have to take all the information that we see and put it out to every person who's interested, or we're just gonna put it on the website? Because it just seems like you're gonna have all this conversation about what's going on. I mean, it'll take months and months to do anything. That's why it doesn't work like that. That's why we're here.
Well, Eric, it's just, to my mind, you wanna bring another marijuana business into town. I'm just trying to be proactive to get the recommendations.
Nobody's looking to
from
bring
the
any
public.
other marijuana business.
Not yet.
Can I make?
Well, unless we open up
And
a,
it's not the process, second, Larry, just give me 1 second, I want to respond to one point Jason made. It was not whether people wanted marijuana dispensary in town. In the beginning, I was not opposed to it. It was the process. There's a distinction.
the process wasn't what was on the ballot.
Well,
the ballot was the
people were
ordinance
mad-
was-
That was what
The
people were
ordinance,
mad about.
what was on the ballot was to overturn the ordinance. The voters voted no to that. They liked
All right,
the ordinance.
I'll
I mean, you
stand
wanna
down
talk
and.
d-
but I wanna
democracy, that's
propose that
democracy.
You can vote against it or
Can
for
I-
it. If you want to
can I
keep it in
make-
your hands as a council,
Can I
I'm
make
gonna
a-
be.
Where it should be,
Can I
it's
make a
representative
comment?
government.
That's exactly, we'll vote on it. That's all I'm asking.
Can I
Just
make a-
put it out there.
Can I make a comment on this then?
Please do.
Yeah, 'cause I don't have that in my packet. I don't
It's in your, no, but.
No,
that
I-
was
You're
in
giving a lot of
previous-
power to-
I didn't have it in mind
No,
either.
it's missing, but.
It was in the January
Okay,
information only.
You're giving a lot of power to an unelected board.
Let-
The planning commission is on
I wanna make a
You
comment.
just say no. As a council, you
All right.
don't have any power at all.
But after you have to.
All right, this ordinance, this change you're at, and this is the first time I saw that, by the way. And we're just you're suggesting we just change that one and everything go to the planning commission. However, we're in the process of eliminating all ordinances, all establishments except retail outlet. So my personal opinion is that this isn't even necessary. Now, it means then that if we ever do anything there, everything's gotta go to the planning commission. But since we're eliminating everything, I don't think it's an issue. But I think so we can end this argument, or end this discussion, I should say, why don't we vote on this one way or the other then? And
Yeah, that's all I'm asking.
all
I'm
right,
just bringing the point up for
then if-
discussion.
Then make a motion, if you get support, we'll vote on it.
But it's for for retail establishment.
All right.
So it's not just the businesses, and that's the way I'm focused on this. It's not the other ones that perhaps we're gonna eliminate today.
By fiat
It's for
today.
the expansion of marijuana businesses by council only. I'm just saying, can't we at least go throw it to the planning commission?
You
and have a
could
discussion
always
on it
have
prior?
a public, you could always have a public meeting and allow discussion.
I would like it to be spelled out so it's not ambiguous and it's part of the
But
ordinance.
it could be a public
If-
meeting and not
if
a
it is-
planning commission meeting, keep it within the city council and allow public comment.
Well, I'd prefer it go to a planning commission so they can make a recommendation. I think it offers a good check and balance and maybe
It's the same
a
people
little more of
talking.
an even keel, depending on how this business expands in the future. I'm just looking out for the average citizen who maybe would like to have a little bit more input in, say, of city government.
Make a motion.
Okay, I would make a motion that Chapter 11, Section 117.01, authorized establishments, D, that we would strike, or increasing or reducing any types of marijuana establishment authorized to operate in the city, and that I would propose you to add new language, 117.01D1, to read, request for additional new, previously unauthorized marijuana establishments. The expansion or addition of an existing dispensary shall be referred to the planning commission in the context of a public hearing to allow citizen input and participation. Because by fiat too, Jason, I don't know, maybe,
Is this part of your motion?
Stop.
No.
You're done with.
that was it. I was just a quick question though, you know, Jason. If it is, like say, we're discussing by fiat, even though we've struck all these things, a concern of mine is that just by fiat, you could turn around and authorize different businesses?
Well,
Would that be correct?
why is it okay to, by fiat, get away with, remove them, but not increase them?
We
It
have a
seems
motion on the
hypocritical,
floor.
you know, but,
Is there a?
your motion's on the
Ask
floor, is
for
there a second?
Ask for a support. All right, I won't, I don't think I'll support it, but I'll say support just to have a vote on it.
Okay.
Sofa,
No.
Wilson,
No.
Weaver,
Yes.
Zimmer,
No.
Murder absent, Mazer,
Yes.
Schneider.
No.
Okay, I got Sofa, Wilson, Zimmer, and Schneider, no. And I have Mazer and Weaver, yes, so it did not pass.
Thank you for listening to my proposal.
Okay, now, if I'm making a motion to approve everything we changed, if we're changing so much, can I shorten that just to change to what?
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, go ahead.
Why don't we have Alan put this together
Mhm.
and have it in our package for the next meeting, and then we can vote on it then? We don't need to vote on it today, do we?
We can look at the language and.
Right.
No, because, yeah, I think what you're really voting on today would be to make the revisions, and if you want me to make the revisions for you guys to review, I'll do it in a red line format, so that, because, you're not, frankly, I understand, other than maybe we might not be doing the tobacco, well, we can't, because that's gotta go to zoning, but, I understand the revisions that Mr. Wilson talked about. They require some other revisions throughout the ordinances to like eliminate the selection committee in different places. So it'll take some work other than revising the very specific sections. So if the idea is that council would like me to draft the revisions that were talked about today in red line for you guys to review and consider, I'll happily do that. If that's what council wants.
Okay, I can go along with that, then, that way then we're making, actually okay in the revisions as they're made.
Right. Give us a
Because I
chance to
can't-
look at it.
Because I couldn't, I don't have them written down.
I
have to
do.
go- Good, because I have to go through every one, and that might be hard.
It'll be on YouTube.
And so I make a motion then we allow the attorney to make the suggested revisions and return it to us for our review.
When's your next meeting?
On February 7th.
Okay, that's no problem.
Who supported it? I'm sorry. Wilson,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Zimmer,
Yes.
Murder absent, Mazer,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Sofa.
Yes.
Uh,
And we're moving
Jason,
on to Toits zoning, or whatever's going on with Toits business.
Yeah, that's the second one on here, and I understand now that, of course, I know that the revision, the zoning board of appeals objected to the funeral home as a agriculture labor camp. I wrote a memo in here and kind of outlined everything, because they have purchased 2 more parcels. The 80411 Main Street Single Family Home, and I say the parcel number, and 80455 Main Street. This is the former handicap home, and the parcel on there. And so, so I understand that too, there's maybe a pending lawsuit or something on the one.
So, yeah, when the ZBA met, denied the request, I believe offhand it was a special use request, but they denied the request, on the labor camp home. I think it's on Main Street, I don't have the address handy, but, under the law, anybody who is aggrieved or denied a petition from the ZBA has the right to have an appeal of it with the circuit court. So they filed an appeal. One thing I would like to do, and I can talk to Kurt about this, it's very early, right? Like nothing's happened in the appeal. But there is a a YouTube video that Eric shared the link to of the meeting. I think it would be beneficial to have a court reporter transcribe that YouTube video to the best of our abilities, if that is something the city would authorize the expense for. I don't know what that is offhand, but it will make it a lot easier for both myself, Toys Council, and the judge to understand what was considered and talked about at the meeting.
Yeah.
Rough idea how much that would cost?
No idea. Do you know how long the video is offhand?
90 minutes,
It's probably, I would say,
roughly.
maybe $1,000, maybe 1,500, something in there. I think I'm overshooting that, by the way. Just going off of what it costs to have a court reporter of the transcript.
You recommend we should do that?
That would be very helpful to me and the court, yeah. How about if you want to give me the authority up to a certain number, and if it's more than that, I can come back and let council know. I don't have an estimate though.
You do it and then bill us for it?
Yeah, I have a court reporter do it. And
Could we get an estimate? of
yes,
how much?
let me do that, and I will also see if there's a way that I can coax somebody else to pay some of this cost.
And we could approve that by a majority of telephone votes. We wouldn't necessarily have to wait till the next meeting.
No
right?
telephone votes.
No, we
There's
have,
no.
No, I'm saying to allow you to.
I can talk to the mayor, and if the mayor gives me the thumbs up, I trust the mayor that bill would be approved
Oh,
by council
okay,
at the
yeah.
next meeting.
Just so we don't have to wait.
If he tells me that he's okay with me doing it, then it'll just show up as a invoice on your bill. And I'm seeking to get Toys to pay for that, but I haven't had this discussion with them yet, so. And there may be some ability that I can do that.
so you think we should wait or should?
Just wait, I'm just letting you guys know. I'll deal with Kurt on that.
Now, okay, the question is, there's two other parcels, and of course, they're in a zoning that does not allow it. The other thing is that, I don't see how it could happen, but apparently the state can do whatever they want. However, they issued a license for a labor camp to Toy without checking with the city on the zoning.
Again,
Oh, I think they did, didn't they?
Well, that was the first one, I think.
the first one they issued one.
Well, they have to be renewed every year. don't they?
Right, yeah.
No, I don't know if they renewed the second one.
Are you saying they issued one for one of the new properties they
No, that's
purchased? Oh, okay.
80455.
Okay.
No, it's just for the one, but they purchased the other properties for the same thing. Now, it's strictly not allowed, if it was zoned RM, it probably, even though we don't have that, we do have boarding houses and so on.
It's close, yeah.
But we'd have to go back to planning and go through for a labor camp, I assume, because I don't think it's the same things. But I guess what I'm trying to say, how do we proceed then on the other two properties? Because they're,
If they're not allowed, did they just purchase them?
no, they purchased all basically the same time.
Oh, okay, I was thinking you were saying two new ones. Okay, these came up at the
That's what
ZBA
that was
hearing.
when they-
Was
Yeah.
it mentioned as the?
It was,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
So
And I think that the comment was that they believed that they had approval for it. I would have to go back and watch the video, but they specifically mentioned that they had a couple other parcels that they were using that were licensed by the state. So I would have to take a look at the zoning specifically, but.
Well, zoning, zoning,
I think you're pretty
Wait.
close to a boarding house, so if zoning allowed a boarding house, that's pretty close.
well, originally way back I think in '98 or something, we had a revision to the master plan. And that then was zoned neighborhood commercial, which kind of allows intermingling of retail outlets and so on with residential. On 2012, we had another revision to the master plan, and that was then zoned commercial overlay, C1, and it was in the R1 and R1B was single-family home residential. Now, it's strictly not allowed in that.
Right.
Strictly. And so they purchased those, and then, by the way, we changed the zoning to the master plan in 2015. Okay, so that is strictly not allowed. these type of homes. So I guess what I'm questioning is, how do we close the barn door here before the horses get out?
And just to make it clear, that the idea at the time was to get away from residential multiple on Main Street and to sort of support the idea of certain type of businesses buying up. It was supposed to make it open more doors for people who were selling their houses on Main Street to make, like what Richmond has, where you have like houses turned into more like an office center
Right.
or whatever.
I would have to take a look specifically at the language. I want to correct something I said earlier. They applied for a variance, not a special use. Because you're right, it is strictly prohibited.
Right.
So their application that is up for appeal was a variance. We need to make sure that they weren't given anything by building or zoning or anybody to suggest that their use of those others is compliant with zoning law. We need to look at the files before we start trying to
Okay.
shut those down.
Yeah, just kind of backtrack a little bit. On the funeral home, and I haven't seen it, but Erica apparently has it because you mentioned it to me, there was a building permit issued.
Correct.
And I guess that's correct.
Yep.
Now, they indicated in some correspondence that I went through that they've spent about $60,000. I talked to our current building inspector, and they said he don't believe they spent 60, they might have spent 25, but that's not, yes, that's whatever, I don't know. Now, does that open up kind of a...
No, my recollection of the building permit, and I didn't bring this file with me, was that there was no indication that it was a zoning compliance certificate.
Okay.
That's what I keep coming back to
Yeah.
here myself, Val.
Yeah.
They needed to get a certificate of occupation that was stating what they were used.
Correct.
If there's any change of use in the building,
That's it, yep,
Or the
that's
land.
correct, yep.
and there was obviously a change in
Correct.
use, whether it was Elias, which was licensed under the adult foster care, which is totally different from the
Agriculture.
migratory camp, or the funeral home, which is a totally different use.
So.
They did not have that.
It is not unusual, and in fact, it's more, I would say it's more common than unusual, that if I'm buying a parcel of property, so circle this back 2 years ago, when Toys is looking to buy the funeral home, my recommendation as their counsel would have been, yeah, we can enter into an agreement that we're gonna buy it, and it's gonna be subject to a variance being granted by the ZBA.
Yeah.
So you will see potential purchasers coming to ZBAs to get variances so they can close. They bought it and then came and asked.
Yeah,
Well-
there were no contingencies, right?
So could you maybe then look and see, because those two other, and if you got the meeting there, it's cited the lot numbers and so on, I made a note on there, so.
Yeah.
And see, if we should be doing something now, or do we wait till they do something? I don't know. Just give us your legal opinion on that,
Yeah,
if you would.
yeah.
Did we send that original application, Donna? To Alan?
I got a
The original
question on that.
application, did we send it to Alan?
What application? Oh, the building permit?
The original building permit
I have
application?
to ask Amber. Did you get it, Ellen?
For the old one,
For the funeral
For the
home.
funeral home.
I believe I have everything
I
I
think
need
Amber
on
did.
funeral home. I think I had that for the
The original
ZBA
application,
here
it's just
today.
one page, it's,
Yeah, there's not a lot of detail to it.
no, there's not, almost nothing on there. other than
Well,
like
just
name and a phone.
for like future reference, because I know when we zoned, you know, when we were doing the marijuana retailer, we were told that we had to specifically zone it to restrict it, otherwise it went unrestricted, right? Do you think that we should add into our language, since we don't have anything that specifically says agricultural label
Might not be a
housing?
bad idea to figure out where you might want it.
Just to put it in wherever this
So,
boarding, rooming, and lodging,
I think,
just to
yeah,
cover it.
I think it's close enough to that, to cover us.
That a judge,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
a judge would say,
But
okay, with it.
you know, if this is an issue with more than this one-off thing, that might be something to consider.
Right, cause I just worry that, like that, cause like you said, if we don't restrict it by zoning, then it could go unrestricted.
Well, the difference with the marijuana is you specifically allow them under a regulatory scheme. So you don't have anything, like you're not granting a license to
I'm
an
just-
agricultural.
Yeah, and I'm just
And then
putting-
not giving it a place to go.
I'm just trying to see into the future how
Oh,
they're going
it's a fair
to appeal
question.
this and say, well, you don't specifically not allow it.
Yeah.
So this is just gonna be
So that's a good
Because
question.
this will end up in court too.
That's a good question. So you're saying that if you have something similar, that it would overlap onto a migrant camp?
That's the argument you make both ways. So that's the argument they would make if they were trying to get into a zone that had a boarding camp. They have a lawful use that isn't permitted and it's similar to that. My argument is we don't say you can't have them. We say you can have them and they're similar to boarding houses and they would be here.
Is there limitations as to how many people can be in that type of a structure or setting?
There is.
And, you know, and I walked through it with the building inspector and I kind of saw what his questions were about the building.
Yeah.
I mean, they're talking about 50 people upstairs. I mean, you look at the
So-
stairway, it's real narrow.
I don't have their.
Do you think the state actually went into that
No,
building?
I don't know. I doubt they did. They claimed at the ZBA hearing that their state permit was for X. It might have been 50. It might have been
It was
75.
54, I just
Yeah.
glanced through that file.
But they also claim that that's just what the state put, and they never intended to have 50 people at that. And so I don't know the process of, it's like a $15 permit or something. I mean, it's like nothing from the state. I don't know the process of the state's investigation. I really don't know whether they're coming down to look at anything.
Do you think that we need to have some type of
Yep.
limits, or not limits, but inspections for rental properties? We don't have.
That's a different can of worms.
I know.
A lot of communities have them. It really depends on the number of rentals you have and your ability to staff somebody who's gonna inspect them. They're not uncommon, and I see them.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I looked at Port Huron.
Yeah, it's
Pretty in-depth.
It's in depth.
They have a huge authority over there, like the
Well, I'm
landlord,
just
the
saying,
landlords association is, it's a pretty big.
That, we're on like the 4th or 5th iteration of that, so, and that's like an ever-living ordinance, right? It's a bit like marijuana, you draft it, you come up with some issues, you see where it works, you see where it doesn't, you revise, and that ordinance that you just referenced is nothing different. Something to think about.
Oh, I think,
Those are all.
Jason, I think we're,
That we're
there's
done
another
with that.
issue, but I don't think the attorney needs to be here.
Oh, yeah, the
Is everybody
blight, the
done?
blight
You know how
issue
many
on Main Street.
Yeah, I don't think our attorney needs to be here for that.
I'm happy to bid you a good day then.
You're welcome to stay, but I think you would charge us for it, so I think maybe.
Yeah.
I like you guys,
So-
cut your break.
And I do watch the money, so.
I know you do. I'll get the revisions to Donna and I'll talk to her about, checking on those other two properties.
Okay,
too.
thank
All right,
you.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Alan.
Yep, nice to meet you.
Okay, on to the blight. Basically, it's on the Main Street property, which is Zone C1 Commercial Overlay District.
I'm
if
gonna,
everybody's
I
aware.
think you're all familiar with it, and that you got one in your paper. There's 3 or 4 more things here if you'd like to look at them, as well as on the road. And, Jason, there's no question there's blight, and I think we should proceed with the, issuing the permits according to 10, I think I had it cited in there, 10 number 12 and 1 and 2, whatever it was. And one is a notice that we give, and first probably should be delivered, a 14-day notice, and another one is that you can allow and get an extension up to 60 days, and sending them a letter. I think I put a suggestion there, if the council determines, and our attorney agrees, of course, we don't need our attorney's agreement on this because it's obvious what's right. That the construction type materials visible on the street as reflected in the attached photograph is a violation of Title 15, Land Usage, Chapter 153 Blight Ordinance, or Blight Prevention, Section 153.02A, B, and 3. Then my recommendation is we notify the owner under Chapter 10, Section 10.12, Notice 1 and 2. And on the blight, there's, back when I became on council many years ago, And in the ordinance, the police department handles the blight on commercial. On the residential, that's determined by council. And I was told by the current, or by the ex-treasurer at that time, that residential is also handled by the police department.
Should we put that in our ordinance?
Now, some entities do have a blighting ordinance, or it may be even an ordinance assigned to do that. Usually, and I did check with Mal and asked if he, and that's the building inspector, if he knew how that was handled. He said that Riley Township has a blight ordinance officer. He's a retired police officer. And I asked how is he paid, by the time that he spends just on the one, or he said no, he's on a retainer. He's paid so much a month whether he does it or goes out or not. So I guess we should do some more, look at it more, Eric. I think you're kind of involved in that a little bit too, and see if we want to handle it that way. But on this case here, I don't think there's any problem. I mean, any question, I should say, on that it's blight. I think we should proceed with it.
Yeah, and there's multiple violations there, because you can't have an ongoing yard sale even if you want to call it a yard sale. Then what are they, for like a week?
I don't remember.
Well,
Oh, okay. I always believed that there was an
I've heard that
ordinance.
too,
Yeah,
but
I've heard it, but
we've looked
Well,
at it.
that you had to
know-
get a permit, and the yard sale could only last for like a week.
I could have sworn that it was in there, I couldn't find
It could have
it.
been one of those things that
I
got cleaned up.
I don't know.
Because Eric asked me about it, and I think we discussed it at one time, and I said, well, basically, nobody takes advantage of it, it's not kind of a non-issue.
I thought it was back when
So,
Charlie Garber was mayor, that we had passed something because there was like a continuous yard sales at a couple places on Main Street. But I couldn't find it in our code.
no, well, there.
I might be looking at the wrong place.
Well, when Harrison's were here in town, they had a yard sale all year. Oh, it was a garage sale. It wasn't out in the yard, it was a garage sale. That basically went on through all the summer. And it really wasn't a big problem, but that it did. But it isn't that we couldn't pass an ordinance, but I don't think I know we discussed it, I remember discussing it, but I don't think we did anything about it.
Well, the thing was is that it wasn't like a garage sale where everything is contained in the garage mostly and then they pull stuff out. This was tables on the front lawn
Oh,
for literally the whole summer, and they actually had people coming in and bringing stuff in to sell on their front lawn.
well, see, yeah,
I mean, I'm talking 20 years ago now.
yeah, well, so.
And I think another issue is those cement barriers he has acting as a fence is not a proper fence either. I don't know
Well-
that you could just,
That was what he did first, and I thought it was terrible.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, that'd be a question probably for Mel or somebody to dig through
Yeah,
and say.
so anyway,
it's-
I think we should proceed with under our ordinance and on this.
Can I add a couple of points that I think
Sure.
are relevant to
Sure.
that, to this issue,
Yeah.
that, just to consider, under 150.055F3, which is in our commercial overlay district. It says there that merchandise may be displayed or stored only within enclosed buildings. So I would suggest that is in violation of
Yeah.
that also.
Yeah, there was like a part to that that said,
And
you
it
can
must-
sell things outside, but it has to be related to the business use.
Exactly, and he doesn't even have a building there, so that is another part of the code that I
His
think
building,
is
his
relevant.
property is not commercial.
Right.
Well, it's under the commercial overlay district.
Right, his property is zoned residential though.
But is,
So he
would
wouldn't
that
even
apply,
apply to
I mean,
that.
that whole strip is zoned
Well-
C1 now, correct?
No, only if it gets transferred, it can be transferred to commercial overlay, or it can remain the same as long as it's not multiple.
So then everything by default, unless
Is what it is.
somebody buys it, it's R1A. R1A.
Unless you sold it to a business or sold it and somebody created a business.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I'm not sure, maybe we should have Alan stay here, but
Jamie might know that.
I know that the current zoning on that property is
Jamie?
R1A, residential.
Okay, and Because I'm looking at the code, or rather the updated master plan, where we're designating that C1 commercial overlay district. And that's kind of the ambiguous thing that I'm trying to narrow it down, is what that actually means and how properties revert. And I have something for our next meeting, I'll bring up that, maybe some language will help that as far as when buildings are change hands, that it reverts to R1A, which has been my understanding that
Well,
those do.
that would bind a lot of people. Say Sally, for example, who wants to sell her house, she would have to sell it to a commercial entity?
No, not necessarily, because there is also language in there that says, that non-conformances can be allowed to continue, but they're not encouraged.
So
So
like
we'd
I
have
said,
to
so
take
if
that by
Robbie,
case by
me,
case.
or Sally, or anybody who's on Main Street were to sell their house, that would be, could be an issue. Like, I couldn't sell it to a single family people. They would have
Well,
to
they're not to be
revert.
encouraged, but
I should,
they could be allowed to continue.
Residential multiple was not to be encouraged, is how I read it.
yeah, residential.
I mean, it's been a long time since I looked at it.
Selling my single family home to a single family should not be discouraged.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mine too.
Well, no,
Yours do.
The same thing, you're just changing it to the same use, again, if there's not a change in use.
Right, but it just allows them to sell it to a commercial entity. It just allows them the option to, but I mean, I wouldn't want to dissuade.
Yeah, I think that's something we need to
selling.
kind of
I
figure
like
out
having some
ourselves.
families on Main Street, it's kind of,
Wow,
because that nice,
with nice neighbors.
And also, I would cite that, it seemed to me we can make a case out of 9201, which is a nuisance ordinance also. And particularly in there, what caught my eye was that, whatever noise injures or endanger safety. If you have people stopping on the side of the road to go in there and check out whatever he has for sale that week out there, that, you're not supposed to interfere or obstruct streets, state streets or highways. And being as that's there, and I'm just throwing it out there just so, give you an idea of what I'm seeing there that's caught my eye. I think it's relevant with, what Mr. Wilson said here, that works too, but there's more than one thing that come into play that would negate him doing what he's
Yeah,
doing.
unfortunately, I mean, how our cities are small, so you've got that situation happens a lot where, your beer delivery truck is parked on Boardman for the doghouse, or B&B shells backing the truck up with a tow truck where, yeah, it could block the road for a couple minutes. I mean, it just happens, but if it's all the time, in and out, I would see that big issue.
I have one question. For the blight, do we have anything written that says the duration of time that it has to be visible before we can issue? Or is it just subject to council discretion? So like what I mean is, does it have to be out in the public forum for 30 days and then we can issue a citation? Is there anything in our code book? I couldn't find it.
I think there's a,
There was.
I think it says,
I could be looking.
if you send out a
It
letter,
says 60 days, doesn't it?
I thought it said if you send a, if you receive a letter, then you have, 14 days to clean it up?
Yeah,
Right.
that's what he's
That's like a
recommending.
10-12.
Yeah, that's the 10-12.
Yeah, you
No, what I'm saying is
Before.
how long he has it out there before we take action.
Yeah, like if he had it one day and then we went
Right.
took action, that'd be silly.
Right.
But if it's out there, like as long as he has.
Right, is there a
How, do we have
set
it, I don't think
specific
we have a
time?
timeline, because if
I don't
it's
think
not supposed to be there, it's not supposed to be there, whether it's one day or 60, I believe.
yeah.
And then once he gets the letter, then our timelines do start.
Right,
Yes.
Chief, you got any information on that? Or any input on this at all, since it sounds like you're gonna be the one enforcing it, so.
Well, first of
Surprise.
all, to Larry's point, Larry, no, regulatory, administrative, zoning type issues, they are handled by enforcement officers, code enforcement, whatever you want to call them, not traditionally the police department. Maybe 40 years ago, the police department did that sort of thing, but not today. Most, whether it be townships or cities, maybe some of them are smaller scale, they employ them on a part-time basis, they do sharing, where they share these officers because they're not full-time, they can't afford them. But they're able to go out and enforce these issues. The police department traditionally doesn't deal with these zoning type issues to see what a piece of property is zoned and whether it meets that criteria for a zoning type violation. They don't. We deal with criminal laws. We don't deal with zoning laws. We don't deal with administrative laws. We don't deal with regulatory laws based in nature of the violation. You talk about how long it's gotta be before it gets identified and a problem that's worth addressing, that's subjective.
That's what I mean.
I
And
know
that's
exactly, no, it
exactly
doesn't
what I'm
say
saying.
anything in there about that, and it also doesn't say anything about not being able to sell stuff. You're right, you can't find it because it doesn't say it, so. Whether it's the I-beam sitting in front of that house, it's a person's car in front of the house, whether it's the festival that you center your garage sales around once a year, it doesn't say you can't do that. So, how would we enforce it? I think a better way of doing it would be the city addressing it. If the issue is the city says that I don't think that should be there based on zoning, right? Based on the way that piece of property sits. It wasn't commercial before, but he's had his excavator and his big dump truck out there for years. Nobody's ever said a word. I mean, not that I've heard of. So why is it an issue now with a piece of property?
That's kind of where I was going with the timeline,
Yeah.
right?
And the other
Well,
issue is really like, you're calling one out for blight, but if you drive around town, we have a lot of blight issues.
Well,
So
that's
we
what-
could definitely keep an enforcer pretty darn busy.
Well, the problem
So
you
where
have
do you
is-
stop?
Well, that's where the subjective question comes into play. There are other businesses here that, from an eyesore perspective, look worse. Are we gonna address those? I mean,
Right.
as a business owner,
Right.
I've been asked this question by business owners when I have brought up things, and they sit around and they just start naming them off about
Yeah.
other places that look worse, in their opinion, look worse. So, I think you kind of need to. And is that piece of property zoned residential? For
Yes,
sure,
it is.
100%. Wasn't it commercial before it was sold?
It was a residential lot, but it was used by a commercial business, being the funeral home, as their parking lot.
Okay.
So I mean, technically, it was being used by a
Commercial.
commercial entity,
But it was still residential.
but it was still zoned
Was there an
residential.
issue with that?
So, but nobody complained about the
No.
funeral home using it commercially. Nobody did.
Nobody did.
No,
So-
but they didn't have all blight out there.
I'm just saying it.
Yeah.
That we looked past it being used as a commercial lot for the entire time that the funeral home was in business. We let that go, you know, and now he's kind of using it as a commercial lot, and we're going after it. Which I don't like it either,
But he
but
was told
where's the
residential.
consistency, and where do you start, where do you stop?
He
Well,
was
that-
told
Who do you
it was
pick on, who do you call out when you drive by other properties that are far worse, far worse?
Well, he's in violation of storing construction.
He's got a lot of issues there.
Right.
Storing construction material outside, and he does not have an open or valid permit.
Right, he's got more than just blight, that's what I was saying, there's multiple ways we could go at this. Could be the yard sale thing, if that's not an ordinance, it could be just the way he's, the fencing stuff that he's got there.
I
Probably a few
couldn't find
violations.
anything with that, Jason.
There's nothing in
Specifically
there.
talks, no, because that's not a
That shows
fence.
fencing material.
It's not a fence.
It's a barrier.
Yeah, it's a barrier, it's not a fence. If you look at the zoning ordinance, it doesn't say a word about that.
Okay.
So has anybody talked to him? Asked him about some of these things?
I thought Jamie did.
I thought the mayor did, but I don't know.
No, Kurt has not yet.
You know what I mean? So,
No, Kurt does say he didn't.
not everything fits in a nice neat category, and I think you all know me, I am not issuing anything unless it meets the criteria that's necessary. I'm not, because I think it might fall into that, or it might be, it's not gonna happen. So, and those are some questions, obviously, not everybody has answers to. We're talking about it today. I don't know, I think I saw it, I think I read it somewhere. That's not the way to handle things. So, the reason I say that is, I think that if that is a true concern, is what's going on there is in violation, I think send them a letter from the city and express those concerns and see where it goes. I think that's a better start. Long-term, Larry, I think we do have enough business here from a code enforcement aspect to have a part-time
Well, I
person.
think we got two issues, Bob, and two issues. One is that we probably definitely should look into how this should be handled. If it has to be changed, we change it. We look at that issue, but then in the same token, we also address this issue by, maybe, as you're suggesting, maybe a letter signed by the mayor and with the violation, and try to proceed to get it correct.
I think that's a better start, and I think his response is gonna kind of dictate what direction you go, whether it's I interpret it this way, you interpret it that way, I flat out am not gonna do it, whatever that response is, I think is his response.
Yeah.
And then we go from there. I think that's a better approach. When you look at some of the ordinance, some of the language, and a lot of it's antiquated, it's probably could be, that whole book, a lot of that could be rewritten and updated. But it also says in there that I'm gonna drive around and identify people's blight on their homes, whether it be their siding, their windows. I'm not gonna do that. I am not gonna subjectively do that.
Yeah.
Nor is anybody from this department while I'm here. That is, it just, it doesn't fit, it doesn't work, there's a better way to handle that.
Well, we'll have to look, we have to look into.
Our ordinance
We'll-
says that you are in charge of that for commercial properties.
Mhm.
Our ordinance says, as far as residential properties, it says as designated by
By the
city
city,
council.
correct, yeah.
Which we have
We have
not,
designated.
we have not formally designated
Well,
you at this
I'm
point.
not sure about that now, because it's always been that way, but.
Always been that way, doesn't
Yeah,
cut
no,
it.
no, I
No,
know.
it's in
And I do that to an extent. Listen, in the summertime,
Yeah.
their grass gets too long, their weeds get too long. Normally it's a knock on the door and it's handled, it's taken care of. I don't have to issue tickets for it, it doesn't go that far. So that does get done, Jason, on a residential
Yeah,
level.
sure you
So
do.
even though it's not technically or officially designated, we do it, right? So we kind of do a mix of both.
It's just a heads up.
But to say that you're effectively gonna go out there, go dig up zoning ordinances and then effectively enforce them, the police department, it's not, those aren't criminal issues. Yeah, they're
Eric,
not.
can you and I kind of look at maybe how we should address the future? And
I think we should get a zoning ordinance officer part-time and put him on the payroll or whatever, whatever it takes, because
You can run around and
obviously,
get at everybody.
he's probably gonna have a lot more experience. Maybe he can even help us, edit our ordinances, what they should say now that, I mean, you're talking about stuff that was written in the '50s, probably, most of that stuff that's in the code book.
Hey, he'll be busy. Go down Powder
Well-
Street West and.
And Larry, it's not
Plenty
even
of blighted
about
houses out
enforcement
there.
necessarily of violations,
Pardon?
it's about making sure things are done correctly as they go along. New projects, things that are in the works that require somebody kind of oversight that's not there right now.
Yeah.
Not just looking back and deeming people that are not in compliance for stuff that's already existing. I think you benefit by having somebody in place, a set of eyes out there. Because everybody's talking, well, I don't know what they're doing at that business. They're building something there, we have no idea. Or people putting stuff in their homes or erecting structures or fences. There's nobody to do that, and it's not a police issue, and it's not being done. So people are just doing whatever they want. So again, it's not just about addressing and
Okay.
punishing, it's
Well,
about moving
blight-
forward and having it
Yeah,
done correct.
well, blight is an issue and we should address it.
Not just the blight, I'm talking about the ordinance and zoning and stuff in general.
All code.
Yeah, all code
Yeah.
stuff,
Well-
not just blight.
Well, we'll look into it. Will you help me out, Eric, with your kin?
For the record, Eric and I have been talking about this for quite a while.
Yeah, I'm getting too
It's-
old to
It's
do all
not a
this
new
stuff.
topic.
Right.
I think the first step would be to get a hold of a zoning ordinance officer, or whatever you want to call it, code enforcement. Yeah, code
And then
enforcement,
go-
because they'll have a lot more experience already.
Yeah, okay.
And it's not a sworn position, so he would probably, be under the mayor or Donna, right? Chief, when you say?
I think it's up to the municipality. It can be in some places, bigger cities, it can be a sworn position. Some of them are even armed in big cities. But out here, no, more often than not, it's not gonna be a sworn position. They work for the city. They
It's
don't-
like a building inspector, right? Except for he's gonna actually,
Right.
and a lot of it's gonna be contact with people saying, hey, what's going on? You got this issue and your neighbors are complaining about it, maybe, or however and they would even know how to do that. I don't know how to do that, so, how to handle the issue.
Yeah,
But yeah, Larry, of course I'll work with you.
okay.
I mean, the city I work for.
Anybody
obviously,
here
is a
want that
bigger city.
position?
But the zoning officers handled everything from,
I don't think
from signs on the corner that weren't supposed to be there, to sidewalks, to setbacks, to, anything zoning related. It's a broad brush. It's not just talking about somebody's, blight necessarily. It's a way bigger issue than that.
Yeah, and if we want to,
And where do you
I
stop?
think probably if we want to
Here?
proceed with the blight, or an ordinance on the individual down there, prior, while we look at getting a zoning officer, I'll try to write up a form or someone.
I mean, let's just send out a letter with a copy of the pages that we
That's what
think he's in violation of and highlight it,
That's what I'm gonna
I mean, here's number one, I mean, whatever it is.
Yeah,
Kurt said he was gonna go down and just
Yeah.
actually talk to the
And
guy,
I'll-
and that might get some things done that we really know.
In the summer, that was in the summer, right?
I'll use this form.
That's
I'll
what
use
he's
some of
been
this
saying
one
that.
here. I think-
I mean, just a friendly letter, hey, this is what,
Well, and I think for blight, talking about it being subjective, if we could write something that makes it not subjective, like you get a letter from the mayor stating this, And then if you're not cleaned up in 14 days or 30 days, then this.
Well, we have that now, that's in place. When I talk about subjective, I'm talking about whose interpretation
Gotcha. Okay.
of blight, because the way it reads now, there's quite a few houses in the city that
Right.
would fall into that. But where did you pick that one, do you do everybody? That's when I say subjective.
Okay.
The actual process is already laid out. You get basically a friendly warning, hey, can you take care of this? And if they don't comply, then you issue them a letter, then your time clock starts and they have to comply. Where it gets a little bit muddy is on the back end, where it says what you're gonna do when they don't comply. You're gonna go fix their house for them, put new windows in, put new siding on at the city's expense. That's not gonna happen either, even though it says it will. It's never
Right.
gonna happen, it doesn't happen anywhere. So they probably could use some cleaning up, because we all know that's not how it's gonna work. So why does it say that then? So
Yeah.
what is the end of that? I don't know the answer. Because there's no judge that's gonna hold them and charge them every single day for blight if they actually went to court. And the ticket, they got charged every single day from the violation where they didn't comply. That doesn't happen either, but it says that's what's gonna happen. So I'm just talking about being realistic. And
Right.
again, a code enforcement officer, a zoning person that deals with stuff on a regular basis, they might have better idea of really where these outcomes end up too, when they do have to get into the court process. So I just we don't deal in that, so I don't know the answer. I do know the court is not gonna assess a fine every single day for 365 days after you wrote a blight ticket. I know that's not gonna happen for sure. And they don't want a ticket sent every single day to them for the same issue, same person, same property. They're gonna say, stop sending us tickets on this person. This is already an ongoing issue, even though that's what our ordinance says you're gonna do. That's not gonna happen either in real life. So that's just being realistic with what
Right.
we're dealing with. There is no nice black and white answer that covers every situation. So.
Right.
Okay, Jason?
I have nothing more, so we're done with that, right? So,
Are we allowed to, you know?
I have nothing more.
Okay. No, I have nothing, I think I expressed myself, what I'm trying to do, so. No,
I'm good, thanks.
Motion to adjourn?